So whatever form of, right now you are seeing me, I am seeing you. So it's the light energy which is falling on the retina. But when the visual nerve starts, it gets converted into an electrical impulse. Okay? So it is received from one end of the neuron and passed on to the other end of the neuron. And from there, it gets passed on to the other neuron with the help of certain chemicals, whose job is to transfer this electrical impulse from one neuron, one cell to the other. Okay? Like a boatman takes the passenger from one bank of the river to the other, drops them there and comes back. Okay? In the same way, these chemicals pass the electrical impulse from one cell to the other. Okay? Now, why I am sharing this with you is, this is what it happens when you listen to the song. This is what it happens when you smell a good fragrance. This is what it happens when you eat rice. Okay? What happens inside the brain is just passage of electrical impulse from one cell to the other. Yet, the experience of listening to the song and having rice in the morning are different experiences, right? Because they go to respective parts of the brain where there is a previous memory and a meaning. So like all animals and birds, they do have experiences, but giving meaning to experiences is essentially human phenomenon. We give meaning to the experiences, we just don't experience it. Okay? In the same way, like everyone dies, right? All animals and plants die. Okay? But human beings are the only ones who think about death. Okay, so we contemplate death, we contemplate future. Okay, we give meaning to our experiences, and that's where our brain functions in a different manner, and that's how we are different, lot different than the other species on the earth. Okay, so what happens is, when this electrical impulse passes from one cell to the other, if it repeatedly gets formed, if it repeatedly gets transferred from one cell to the other through the same route, like how the pagdandis are formed on the mountains. Now, all of you are people living on the mountains, so you know how small pagdandis are formed. Like, people start traveling through that route. Okay, one person goes through that, another person goes through that, and that's how those small pathways are formed. Okay? With the repeated passage of people from the same route again and again, that's how those small routes are formed. Okay? So that's exactly what happens inside our brain, that when the stimulus passes through the same pathway again and again, those neural pathways are formed. Okay? And that's what practice does to us. And that's the reason the activity which we did right in the beginning, if you keep on practicing it every day, the same stimulus will keep on passing from the same route again and again, and that would result into formation of those neural pathways inside the brain. And there would be a day when you would be able to do it. There won't be a confusion there. In the similar way, now this happened for such a small activity, right? Now remember the thoughts that we have been listening to and we have been hearing right from our childhood. Like she said that we were ruled by the monarchs. Okay, now it's like 2 generations, 3 generations before. Okay, then there came a system called patriarchy, which was still not back. Right, it started, especially when we started farming. Okay, till we were hunter-gatherers, it was not much of an issue because we never had to store anything, or we couldn't store anything for the next day, because every day human beings needed to hunt to get the food that they needed for their survival. Right? So, the moment human beings started farming, they settled down at one place. And that's where the idea of storing something for the next day came into existence. Okay, till the time we were just hunting, there wasn't a question. But after we started farming, we started storing something for the future. Now, if I'm storing something for my future, then it has to go to my family, my kids. Okay, my generation, if I'm saving it for the future, right? Now, if it has to pass on to my generation, then I need to be 100% sure that the next generation is mine, it's carrying my genes. Now then the only way to be sure of that was to control women. That was the only way, otherwise how would I be sure that this child is mine, it carries my genes, so whatever I have stored for future has to pass on to them. Okay, so the only way was to control women, and that's how patriarchy came into existence. That is, that's how women are. Okay, and that's how men are supposed to be. Now this kept on happening for generations together, and like the neural pathways or the pugdadis that are formed on mountains, the small pathways that are formed on the mountains, those pathways have formed inside our brain. Okay, it starts from such a simple thing like what is normally given as a gift to a girl child, a small girl child? Doll. Yeah. And what is given as a gift to a small boy child? Cars. Guns. When people buy booties for a small girl child, what is the color of those booties? Pink. And for a boy child? Blue. Okay, so from the infant doesn't know, doesn't have any clue as to who he or she is, but we start feeding in these things right from the time when they are even 1 month old. They are not even touching their food to the ground, and we start feeding in. Okay. Now a small boy child fights with the friends and comes home running, crying. What is the first response of the mother or the grandmother? The boy child fights with friends and comes home running, crying. What is he told? Don't cry like a girl. And you're going to cry like this? Okay. Now, if the girl is like doing all this musty and so if she's called a tomboy, right? She's always told, as she starts growing up, she's told, it doesn't suit a girl. How you should behave, how you should sit, okay, how you should walk as a girl. Okay, now these are the things which we keep on hearing right from our childhood. Okay, and then those neural pathways are formed inside our brain, and then those become our own thoughts, our own belief system, which results into we making certain choices. Now equality is such a thing. That's where we start discriminating, as I said, right from the color of the booties to the toys. We start discriminating too. Okay. And this is something which never came into existence naturally, right, as a process of evolution. Now, treating both as different is not about sex, it's about gender, right? Gender is the social aspect of the sex, biological sex that you have, right? Now, this gender is a story that we created. It never existed biologically as a process of evolution, like the sex and everything evolved. It doesn't evolve that way, right? It's a story that we created, that this is how people should be, this is how a girl should be, and this is how a boy should be. Human beings created those stories. The biggest story human beings created, which never existed naturally. What is the biggest story that we created? Gender is one story, but the biggest story, the one which rules the entire world these days, has been ruling. The biggest story, money. Money is one story. It never existed biologically. It never evolved in the process of evolution. It was a story that we created. Gender is a story that we created. It never existed biologically. So the issue is, if we are the ones who have created these stories, then who's going to change it? We, right? Naturally, it's not going to change. We will really have to make a conscious effort, and that's exactly why these laws have to be made at the first place. Because it doesn't exist naturally in our society, because those neural pathways are formed. Now, if we have to change the pathways, we have to start telling different stories now. Stories which are more about the equality, stories which are more about gender neutrality, stories more about inclusivity, not discriminating, not rejecting anyone. So, if these are the stories we have created, then we have the responsibility to change it, to make it into a better society. And so, let us make use of this law as a tool to bring about this change. That's exactly the idea behind this. Otherwise, we have an online course for the orientation, and of course all of you know about the Posh law, but then going much beyond the law and understanding why we also behave in certain way is the basic reason why we have come all the way from Pune to Mizoram. So that's the idea, and that's what I would expect you to share as well, so that we can start building up new stories which are based more on the equality, more on the safety and security of everyone, safeguarding each one's rights, so that it becomes very natural to us. Okay. In one of the colleges, I was conducting a workshop, and one of the master's student asked me, "Ma'am, what is the way forward?" Okay, so I said, like, the only way forward is that we don't need these laws. The moment the need for these laws is over, I think we have evolved as a society. We have evolved as human beings. Okay, so we will start with how this law evolved, a story of that law. Probably some of you might not be knowing that how it law, because all of us at least know that for a law to come into existence, it has a long journey to make, right? So let us see the story of the evolution of the